Going over part 2 of the Quinnipiac poll that was just released. I did my first video on Pennsylvania. That video should be out by now by the time this one comes out. So this is part 2. This is the state of Michigan. Michigan, as you see in the top header here, Harris is 50, Trump is 45, Stein has 22. I'm going to read more in depth about the poll itself and some of the statistics in it. So in the state of Michigan, the presidential race, Kamala Harris, the current vice president, has 50% support among likely voters. Donald Trump, the 45th president and former president, receives 45% support. And Green Party candidate Jill Stein receives 2% support. All other listed third-party candidates receive less than 1%. Democrats in this poll back Harris 98%, while Republicans back Trump 94 to 5%. Among independents, 47% support Harris, 44% support Trump. In a hypothetical two-way race between Trump and Harris, Harris receives 51% of support and Trump receives 46%. With a gender gap as wide as Lake Michigan, Harris leads Trump by about 20 percentage points among women, and Trump leads Harris among men by half that, according to Malloy, who helped conduct the poll. For enthusiasm, 79% of likely voters support Harris, say they are very enthusiastic about supporting her. 83% of likely voters supporting Trump say they are very enthusiastic about supporting him. The one silver lining in this poll that's a very good poll for Harris that may concern if you're a Democrat is more people are enthusiastic to turn out for Trump than Harris. That could mean that maybe some of Harris's support stays home and doesn't vote and leads to a close election. I'm not saying that will happen. I'm saying that is one minor note of concern in this poll, which otherwise is a great poll for Harris. Michigan favorability ratings, 48% of likely voters have a favorable view of Harris, while 47% have an unfavorable view of her. 44% of likely voters have a favorable support of Trump, 53% have unfavorable support of him. So that's the state of Michigan. How it factors into the average right now, Kamala Harris currently has a 1-point lead in the Real Clear Politics average of polls for the state of Michigan. The new Quinnipiac poll is certainly the biggest margin for Harris of any of these polls. A 905 likely voter sample size, margin of error 3.3%. In the last video in Pennsylvania, I had some questions about the Quinnipiac poll and some questions about whether the 5-point spread is accurate or not. I don't want to echo the arguments I made in the last video exactly the same because I do have some similar concerns. Insider Advantage had this at a 1-point race. Michigan News Source had a tie. CBS 1 point. Trafalgar a tie. The Hill Emerson 3. Epic MRA 1. It seems Michigan, even though I do fully expect that this is a state that's more Democratic of the 3 Rust Belt states, and I think Kamala Harris will win it on Election Day, I have a hard time believing right now Harris is winning the state by 5 points. It's something about this. It's not anything in the data itself that's inaccurate. It's just a gut feeling to me. I just have a very hard time imagining Kamala Harris is up in Michigan by 5 points. And my reasoning for this is when you look at the 2020 election, the state of Michigan voted for Joe Biden by 2.8% of the vote. Trump got 47.84%, Biden got 50.62%. In 2016, Trump got 47.50%, Clinton got 47.27%. And just to show you, just to go back a little bit, this is 2012. Obama got 54%, Trump got 44%. That was 9.5% spread. In this current poll right now, +5 for Harris, 51-46. I can't imagine Michigan going to Harris on Election Day by 5 points. I just think that's too big of a spread for Harris. I don't think Harris's 51% is inaccurate at all. I think Harris getting between 52 and 48% of the vote is certainly where I think the range is for Harris. But I think the polling average right now, 48.6 to 47.6 for Michigan, is far more likely than this poll. I really question the +5 support for Harris in Michigan when every other poll seems to suggest that it's 3 points or less. I think a 3-point margin of victory is probably Harris's ceiling in the state of Michigan. 5% lead for Harris isn't impossible, but I have my reservations about it. But nonetheless, take it on face value, say it's +5 for Harris. On the electoral map, Michigan goes in the lean Harris column at +5. That gets Harris and Walz up to 241. Michigan's a state that on its own is not necessarily essential for Harris and Walz, but it is definitely very important to their pathway to 270. Because for Trump to win the White House, he needs to win at least one of Pennsylvania or Wisconsin or Michigan. And if Harris cuts off Michigan, she doesn't guarantee she'll win the presidency, but she makes it a little less likely for Trump to win the presidency. She needs to win Michigan in conjunction with Wisconsin and Pennsylvania in all likelihood to really win the presidency. That gets her to 270. That pretty much cuts off all plausible paths for Trump getting to 270 and becoming the next president. So Harris having a +5 in Michigan, if it is accurate, that's certainly a good sign and a good step that she's in a good position to win this state and cut off one of Trump's Rust Belt states to winning the White House. And if that Pennsylvania poll, which again, I have my doubts about, but if it is accurate, and that gets Pennsylvania to Harris in the lean column, that gets her up to 260, then it just becomes the state of Wisconsin left. Because Trump could win Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina. That gets Trump to 268. If he does not get one of the 3 Rust Belt states, there's not a pathway to victory for Trump that I can see on election night. And this is why winning a state like Michigan on its own may not seem super important, but in conjunction with winning Pennsylvania and winning Wisconsin, that's the difference between a Harris presidency and a Trump presidency. Trump wins Wisconsin, but loses Michigan and Pennsylvania, Trump can still win. Harris wins Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania, Trump winning is pretty much impossible. So this poll for Michigan is definitely a good sign for Harris, and if the +5% is true, then it's definitely a good sign. She's in pretty good standing in the electoral map. So yeah, that's pretty much all I want to go over in this video. Again, it's not anything in the data. The data seems pretty solid. Quinnipiac's polls do have a streaky history of supporting Democrats more than Republicans, so it's more of a gut feeling that I'm not totally 100% trusting of this +5 Harris number. I think the 51% for Harris is pretty reasonable. I could expect that. 46% for Trump at the same time. That's the lowest of all the polls. That one I'm having a hard time believing. But nonetheless, a good poll for Harris, a Harris lead nonetheless, and I'll take it at face value at that. That will do it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to give it a like. And if you really liked it, please remember to click the subscribe button. And make sure you turn post notifications on so you always get notified when I post a new video. That way you never miss one. Also, please remember to share this video with your friends and family if you really like the video. And remember to stay tuned because I'll be posting at least one video every single day leading up until Election Day, so I'd really appreciate it if you keep coming back and watching those videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in a future video.